We're back. Fireside chat number 2 with my man John Stegeman, the applied technologist and evangelist for the graph database pioneering company Neo4j. John, how are you? Good to see you.
Oh, good to see you too, Alec. Glad it's Friday. Looking forward to a long weekend, actually.
You and me both, although my fantasy football draft's coming up and I'm historically bad, so I have a lot of homework to do, but it's fun homework, so we'll see what happens. Hopefully I can
Yep,
finally win, which all my buddies watching this will tell me there's absolutely no way.
no
Um,
chance.
that being said, all right, here we go. We know the drill. These things are tight. So your CEO, Emil Eifrem's presentation at AI Engineer, I watched it. I loved it. One of the things I really loved, and I hope you can help us unpack it for the audience here, is the
hmm
way he talked about that we are now stepping into and have stepped into the fourth era of search, and that's the GraphRAG era. And I thought what was kind of neat, and I'll let you do your thing and unpack it, but I thought it was neat how he drew a line between some of the innovation that enabled Google to become Google with the indexing and the graph orientation to those innovations and how we got here. So I don't know, John, if you want to maybe give it a little bit of love, but would love to hear kind of how we got here and what is this fourth era and why is it important?
Yeah, so thanks, Alex. So if you think back, those of us who have been around for a while, back when in the early days of the internet, the challenge was finding stuff. I mean, today we've got Google, right? So it's not even people don't even think about it, but I remember back in the days, what was it called? Gopher, before we even had the web. I don't know if you remember Gopher, but just finding stuff, you had to kind of know where to look. And so we started to go through it. Emil talks about Alta Vista, which was just really like a text keyword search. What Google did with their platform is they called it things, not strings.
Yeah.
So rather than just searching for some kind of keyword in the text, they were actually able to extract concepts out from the text that they were indexing and turn it into things. So nowadays, if you search something that Google knows about, you'll get this little box over on the side. You search the Taj Mahal, you get a box over here that says, here's what the Taj Mahal is, when it was built. So you've got information, and it's almost like the machine is anticipating what you're asking about, right? As opposed to just parroting back information. And so what is this? The fourth era of search is with GraphRAG, where we can now start to we could start to do that in a company, with company data, not just needing the power of Google to make all that work, but we can now start to take company information, extract things out of it, build a graph out of it, understand how it all relates, and then start to ask questions of that data with real language, right? Like we do with, the whole Gen AI thing is all about using natural language that we're familiar with rather than having to carefully construct. I remember there was an art to using Google at the beginning. You had to figure out how to kind of phrase your search to get what you were looking for.
I love that. And to that point, I remember during and again, my audience, I think, knows part of the reason why I'm so stoked on graph databases and knowledge graph is it visualizes things. And I think there was a moment in that presentation, which was pretty cool. CEO was like, listen, I'm not here to necessarily say that, it's all about graph database and knowledge graph only, it can coexist and so on and so forth. But
hmm
I wonder if you could kind of help the audience understand. I'm sure folks will watch the video, but when it came to that moment where he compared, right, he said a computer and a machine can understand this. A human looks at this and we can't necessarily extract the insight. We can't really understand it. So the machine can, but we can't.
Right.
Versus this, right, the knowledge graph, both the machine and the humans, us, can both understand this. And that's a very powerful thing to unlock in a company or beyond. I don't know if you have some thoughts on that, but I think that would be cool
Yeah,
to
I
hear
do have
your
a couple of
perspective on
thoughts.
too.
A couple of thoughts. First of all, everybody talks about vectors and embeddings and as the new innovation, and they kind of are because the LLMs made us realize that there's these things out there called vectors, but they're very I don't know, they call them opaque, right? If you showed me, I think in the video you're talking about, Emil compares vectors for apples and oranges, right?
Yep.
And we know that they're both fruits. If we look at that from a graph representation, we say, oh yeah, apple, fruit, orange, fruit. If you look at a vector, you see the string of 1,000 numbers, and you compare it to the string of 1,000 numbers, and you go, okay, what's the similarity between these two things? Are they close in space? To us, it makes no sense. We have no way of understanding that. Computers do, right? So there's good things about that, because vectors are really good at taking really complicated things and simplifying it down to something that computers can do math on and say, you know what, these are similar. But it doesn't give us a lot of understanding. What gives us a lot of understanding is seeing how they relate. And could I maybe tell a story about how this worked for me? When I was working with some universities last year, and we were looking at campaign finance, for example. And my team said, hey, could you maybe do a demo on campaign finance and find something interesting to show them? And I have no clue how campaign finance works, but I did know, I remember hearing about this guy, George Santos, if you're in the US, right, who was apparently up to some shenanigans. I said, let me see what I can see. So I loaded in a bunch of campaign finance data. I said, let me start with George Santos, and now let me start to expand out and see what's connected to him, what's connected to the committees. Now let me start seeing where the money's going. And immediately my brain went, something doesn't look right here. I have no idea but what I was looking at, but this doesn't look right. And I'm not going to comment on what I found because I don't want to get myself sued, but
Nope.
it was something, it just looked, if I were an investigator, I looked at it and I said, this is something I should look into. So what made that aha moment come on for me was just seeing the picture, seeing the graph, seeing how things related, because, the very best pattern matching software we have is inside our brains, right? That's what our brains do. And, so taking something that's very intuitive, very visceral, something that you can almost touch, and seeing how concepts relate to each other, and then applying that to this concept of the fourth generation of search, that was a big eye opener for me. And just seeing it happen live in front of me like that was super powerful.
I love that. I couldn't agree more on the pattern matching in particular, right? I think we as humans, the more experience we have on this earth, in business, life, what have you, you start to have a sixth sense. You can start to see around corners, and I think some of what we're talking about here is about that. So let's transition real quick to that other topic I wanted to bring up, right? As I mentioned to you previously, so there was this incredible case study that was presented by Thomas Menard of L'Oreal, where it documented what they were able to do with generative AI as a service. And it sounds like, basically, I won't put words in his mouth, but in about 3 months' time, they're able to stand up with the help of LangChain, as well as GCP. They're able to stand up this incredible and highly useful case study that we can talk about now and very quickly. But essentially, what I thought was most fascinating about it, and we'll make sure we drop a link in it, to it in the video, is the idea of how quickly an enterprise as big as that can actually start to step into this territory and start, pattern matching, seeing things, using the type of technology we're talking about. Now we're moving, graph database and beyond, right? So I know LangChain is a I believe I should say, is a partner of Neo4j, and I think you guys feel good about them. I certainly do, and Harrison Chase and whatnot. Does it make sense to maybe kind of comment a bit on the case study and or LangChain, and just help people understand a little bit of how all this stuff comes together from your perspective? Because they've heard it from me, that's for sure.
Yep, yeah, sure. So yeah, LangChain is a company that we work with. They're one of the leaders in what I like to call orchestration with Gen AI. So what's orchestration? There's so many moving parts. You've got the LLMs, and you've got lots of choices for LLMs. You've got different choices for how you ground it. Are you using a knowledge graph? Are you using vector? So all of these pieces that need to be wired together and make work together. LangChain is one of the companies that has software that kind of does all that. It makes it easier to do. And so the L'Oreal case study to me was really interesting for a couple reasons. First of all, they moved, like as you said, they moved so fast and we're able to get into it quickly. I think the companies that we're seeing succeed right now are companies that are willing to move really quickly and not so much get bogged down into, you know what, we need to pick the exact right piece of software or the exact right technique, because this is all changing so fast. It's about how fast can I iterate, how fast can I try something and learn and get something useful out there. And what struck me about L'Oreal in particular was they took a lot of things that everybody in Gen AI is concerned with. So how do we make sure this is secure? How do we make sure that we can maybe centralize our billing for all of this LLM usage instead of doing it on people's credit cards with expenses? How do we track the conversations? How do we put governance around it? All these things that probably every big company out there has 20 teams looking at from a different perspective. They said, you know what, we're going to make some choices here. We're going to have an opinion. Is it the best? Don't know, but it's something that's workable right now, and it's something where we've kind of solved these problems for the first round, and then we just put a wrapper around that and say, you need generative AI capability. Here's an API your team can use to do this, and you don't have to go figure all that out. So that it really that's visionary on their part to do something like that, and to be able to do it so quickly and start generating value quickly and then learning from that and then improving that. So the great thing about an API is, what if they made a bad decision or something needs to be improved? No problem. It's behind an API. They just fix it on the back end. Everybody else who's using it now gets the benefits of those fixes.
I love that. Perfect answer, John. We didn't even talk about that, and I feel like that in my head, I was like, I hope he says move fast and make decisions. And you said it. That's awesome. Well, I we're at time. We try to keep these things at 12 minutes, but I really appreciate you coming by again. I know that my network and audience does as well, and hope you have a great weekend. And again, thanks very much for stopping by, and we'll talk again soon.
Yep. Thanks, Alec.
Thank you.